Hello and welcome to my studio. It's a really close day here today in London. We've had a few thunderstorms and I've shut all the windows to keep the noise out. So we've got a big building site over the road. My daughter, lovely Sadie, is behind the camera. And you can just see, if you look out the window here, the Wimbledon football ground, the new one that's being built. So I've got a really good view of it, but it does mean that it can be noisy. So I'm hoping that they'll down tools soon, and but yeah, just to keep the windows closed, so hopefully I don't get too hot. But welcome to the studio. As I said, I've got my daughter Sadie here behind the camera, which means that I got my hands free and my camera doesn't get covered in clay. I've got my little dog down here, little Coco. She comes with me to the studio most days. She's got a massive chew to keep her busy today. Yeah, so that's the setup. I have a room. It's not that big, but it's absolutely perfect for my needs. You can see I've got some work on the shelves over here, work in progress, more work in progress than I have finished work at the moment. I have my table that I do a lot of my decorating on here, and I'll show you a little bit of that later. My wheel, all work in progress, some stuff I was throwing yesterday. And then over here, I'll just have a quick look. This is my kiln, which I love. It's Nabatherm, and yeah, it's great. It's really brilliant. Takes up quite a lot of space in the studio, and I don't tend to be able to work in here when it's on. I tend to fire when I know that I'm going to have a day off the next day, so that because it can get really hot. Although in the winter it's obviously lovely. Yeah, as Piyush said, I've been working in ceramics for a long time. I graduated from Camberwell College of Arts in the late 1990s. And I set about sort of establishing a studio in Peckham, first of all, with a whole load of wonderful friends of mine who were on the course with me, and I'd met through Camberwell. And I spent a bit of time in a couple of studios there, which were railway arches, and absolutely brilliant, loved it. It was a little bit away from where I lived, though, so the journey was a bit hard. And 2 years ago, I made the decision to move somewhere closer to home, and now I'm in this wonderful studio at Wimbledon Art Studios. And it's probably, you know, in the last few years, really, that I changed direction in my practice, and I, you know, sort of have established myself in this space. I miss my friends dreadfully, but I've made new friends here, which is great. In our artist studios, I think we have 150 so artists, so there's always somebody to talk to, and there is also often quite a lot of people that you can ask advice from if you want to do something differently. When I do my screen printing, for example, which is how I do my patterns, there's various screen printers here, so I can use their services and their advice, which I do. So when I started making ceramics at college, I was doing slip casting. I did do throwing. I learnt to throw whilst there. It was one of the things you sort of had to do, and I liked it. But I got sort of heavily involved in slip casting after a visit to Stoke-on-Trent, where I worked at Wedgwood for a while. And for many years, I was making sort of little bowls like this. Each one was slip cast, and then each one was hand altered to give it sort of difference in the outside, and then glazed and lustered. So quite a laborious process. But I loved it. And together they were lovely jewel-like, and people seemed to like them. They were bigger, they were smaller. And that's what I was doing for a number of years. And then very sadly, about 4 years ago, nearly 5 years ago, my mum fell ill with cancer, and she lived in the Midlands. I lived in London. I have 2 children, and I wanted to go and be with her and take her to treatments and things. So I tried for a while to keep everything going, all those balls juggling. But after a while, something had to give, and my ceramic work did. And in retrospect, it was one of the best things that happened to me, because I had a chance to step back and reevaluate and sort of say to myself, what do I really want to do? And I wanted to explore throwing again. And one of the things I rediscovered during that time was this little bottle. And this is really the start of all my new work. It's a bottle that came from China. And I was given it, or I acquired it as a child. And it was basically my great uncle Bernard, my dad's mum, so my grandma's brother. He traveled extensively in China at a time when people didn't really do that. And he used to come back with fascinating stories and send me wonderful postcards. And yeah, and this little bottle, I sort of rediscovered it and thought to myself, wow, I wonder if I can make something like that. You know, I love the thin neck. Sorry, the dog can hear a dog outside, so she's barking, she's grumbling a little if you hear a dog barking. And yeah, so I wondered if I could actually throw something like this. I think this might well have been cast, but obviously this was very reminiscent of things I'd seen in the V&A. And that was really my starting point, that bottle. Can I throw a bottle? And then I do go, I mean, my sketchbooks, I don't keep them up as much as I did at college, but, you know, they are trips to the V&A and little sketches of shapes I like. And I kept coming back to sort of rounded forms and long neck forms and things like that. So that was really the starting point. And I started to throw. And I loved the blue and white ceramics. My mum had got a little collection of blue and white ceramics, which I now have. And, you know, I really loved that sort of style. And I was also looking at various techniques and things. And I remembered that when I'd been at college, I don't know where it is now, it's under here. I'd done a project on underglaze transfer decoration. This is my glaze project from the third year. And yeah, so in here is a lot of information about using underglaze transfers. I was always interested in transfers. And so I, again, got hold of this, and the two came together really. And I started by using what we call stock transfers that you can buy online. And they certainly formed some of the decorations of my work. And then I moved on from there to be able to create my own. And so that is really what I do now. And there's a few pieces of work dotted around. These are all made, thrown on the wheel, and then decorated with these transfers. And I add the sort of red just to give that little pop, which I really loved. And I'm always playing with the decoration. Each piece I make is different, different in its form and different in its decoration. And that keeps me interesting. And I think that's me rebelling against the production of the same thing over and over again. Although each one was different, essentially it was quite a laborious process to make those, whereas I really love making the things I do now. So what I'd love is that if you ask me questions throughout, you can do that, I think, through the chat box, and Piyush will feed them to me. What I thought I'd start off with doing was by throwing, doing a little bit of throwing. Please ask questions. It's not a lesson, but I'll certainly give you any tips and advice if you so wish. And yeah, we'll go from there. So I'm going to get myself over to a quick glass of water, drink of water. And we'll go over to the wheel. I have to mind my head here. I've moved the wheel around for today because normally I'm sort of sitting this way and I'll be facing a mirror, but all the action is obviously on the, I'm right-handed, so the action's in, and I just thought it would be easier for everybody to see. So I'll just wait for Sadie to get the camera set up. And we'll get going. Shimming a bat system currently from a company called Hartley and Noble, and they do these amazing bats that fit over your wheel head, so it stops you having to fix bats all the time. And it's amazingly time saving. And recently I did, some of you may know, but recently at the very beginning of lockdown, I took my wheel home, and I basically one day decided I was going to do this challenge for the 2.6 challenge and raise some money for the Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation. My mum sadly died of lung cancer, so it's a cause very close to my heart. And they were brilliant in sending me loads of these extra bats so I could throw my 26 pots in one day much more easily than it would have been if I'd had to fix a bat each time. So I work with porcelain. I work with porcelain because I love the feel of it. It's not the easiest of materials to work with, and I use Audrey Blackman. I learnt that from, or I picked it up along the way with various teachers. One thing I should say, yeah, I didn't do much throwing training when I was at Camberwell, just a briefest amount. And I started throwing again, and it's amazing what you can remember, what stays with you. It's a bit like driving. And then obviously over the years, I have gone and sought training from people I admire as and when I felt I needed it. So I've trained with Joe Davis, who makes wonderful porcelain pieces, Karina Ciscato, and Gareth Malone as well. I've worked with him. So, amongst others. And I've got a wonderful friend called Debbie Randall, who also throws the most amazing tableware at the Archers in Peckham, and she's been a massive support over the years. It's a very, very lovely community, the ceramics world. So I'll start off by sort of placing this on the wheel. Now, hopefully this is going to work, because obviously I'm not used to throwing on a camera and live. And when I do it on my Instagram page, I can not post it if it doesn't work. So fingers crossed this one does. But I start off, I've wedged the clay really well. And I start off by just coning it, just to mix that clay around. We can't use too much water with porcelain. We've got to be a little bit careful how much we take on board. So where I can use the slurry, I'll mix that around on my hands. But what I'm trying to do is just sort of get this piece centered so that I can then start to. If there's any questions, please feed them through.
Do you want to listen to some of the questions? Are you
yeah,
okay?
that'd be great. Yeah, that'd
be
great.
Are you focusing?
I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I got other balls if it all goes wrong. But yeah, no, feed them through.
Okay, so somebody has asked that, did you study art at college?
No, I didn't. I studied a BA in ceramics. Ceramics is actually my second career. I wasn't a newbie when I went to Camberwell. I had had a career in advertising before that. Got a little bit disillusioned and left and travelled around a bit. And when I came back, I hadn't done any art really at school because I hadn't been allowed to. I'd been deemed to be academic. And so in those days, you couldn't do both. And I basically did an art access course, which is the equivalent of an A-level, which was all sorts of art, a little bit like a foundation, really. And one of the things I did with that course was I took an evening class in ceramics with a guy called Barry Guppy in Pimlico. Wonderful place, wonderful times. And I just loved it. I still remember the feeling of making my first thing, building that first thing. And yeah, one thing led to another. At the end of the course, I had a portfolio and I thought, well, I might as well use this. And so I applied to Camberwell and got in. So I was very lucky, and I was the first year's intake of Richard Slee. So I had a very fortunate time to be there. We had great leadership. It was great fun. The freedom that we had to create was amazing. And gosh, if I could go back and do those 3 years again, it was the best 3 years. All the materials and everything on hand, great space. It's all changed now, sadly, it's not there anymore. But yeah, that's what I did. Right, I'm going to pull this up now. What I've done is I've opened up the piece, and I'm also then, with porcelain, you have to be very careful to compress the base. So I just use it with my fingers. Some people use tools. But you compress the base because otherwise you can get what they call S cracks in the bottom. So it's just a crack shaped like an S. But you can imagine when you've spent a long time making something and then there's a crack in the bottom, it's not the best feeling. So spending a little bit of time compressing the base is important. So I'm just bringing up the sides now and then checking the rim. And then I'm sort of ready to try my first pull. A little bit more water. And I'm going to do that by pressing it at the bottom. And then slowly bringing out a little bit more water. I always keep the top quite tight. I've buried all my tools here.
Did you always work in porcelain?
Do you know, I slip cast in porcelain. And then when I started throwing, I think I just love porcelain. I love the smoothness of it, the creaminess of it, and the whiteness of it in terms of being able to have it as a background for decoration. Although in a lot of my pieces, I cover it up completely. So you could argue why. But yeah, I do love the feel of it when I'm using it, I think. And there's no grog to hurt my hands. I do have some stoneware here and I do throw some stoneware pieces, but yeah, I do love porcelain. So what I've done here is I've pulled up the sides and I'm going to start to shape it now a little bit.
I have a question, Carolyn. How thick do you leave the base at this point?
The base is probably just under a centimetre. I throw quite thickly because the shape will come when I turn it. So I have another set of tools and I probably take, twice as long to turn a piece as I will to throw a piece. The turning is really important, and I used to hate turning. It's one of those things where, it can all go horribly wrong, and you've got all the effort that you've made to throw it when that goes wrong. So it's even more frustrating than when it collapses when you're throwing it. And but I think I did a course with Karina Siscato at Morley College, a throwing porcelain course, and in that obviously we learned a few turning techniques, and that changed the world for me. And now I love turning because that's when the shape really evolves in my mind. So for this piece, I'm going to bring it out here, so it'll be a bit wider, but I will keep a heaviness here to support it as I do that. And then when I turn it, all of that will come away. So I've left a thicker bit at the bottom, and I'll be able to cut that away to create a nice curve at the bottom. Right, so let's go in and do some shaping. So I use a tool when I'm doing this, and what I'm doing is just pushing on the inside just to shape it gently. So we don't do it all in one go either. If you try to do it all in one go, it wouldn't be happy and it would start to collapse. So I'm leaving a thicker bit at the top here at the moment, and I'm going to start to, I've got a little bit of water collecting in the bottom, so I'm going to take care of that. So I've got the start of the width I want, and what I'm going to do now is bring the clay in, start to bring it in, because obviously it goes out too wide, it's not very happy, it doesn't really like this, sort of going against what it wants to do. So you've got the force going round and it wants to start flaring out. I'm just using my finger to bring that curve around. And I'm going to start to bring that up. And then I'm going to start to bring it in again. It's a combination of speeding up the wheel, slowing down the wheel, pressure at various points. The one thing people often ask is, or say, and it certainly used to happen to me all the time, is how do you, get to this point and haven't got enough clay left to form a neck. So you really have to think that through beforehand, and you have to leave clay at the top to do that, but you can't leave too much because otherwise it will collapse. So it's a bit of a game, but it's all practice. Throwing is all practice. So it helps if you love what you're doing, because so I'm starting to form that neck. There we go. Tidy that up a little bit. Some of the lumps and bumps that happen, where it might dip a bit, I've got enough clay there to tackle that during the turning. So I'm now going to bring it up a little bit more, the neck.
Did you ever have any accident which you really liked, a surprise accident? and you really
gosh.
liked and kept the piece?
Well, yes, I've got some pieces behind me here, which, I mean, this piece here I loved, and I think there's a crack in it. So I keep a few pieces that have got cracks in them. There's a piece over there, a red piece, and I just use them to keep my tools in. Yeah, there's some pieces. I mean, lots of pieces I make, I do fall in love with and can't let go of. I have pieces that I've had for a few months that I wouldn't put for sale until I'm ready to. And I think a lot of people are like that, actually. You do fall in love with pieces. And I think as I've got better at throwing, I'm happy. Or I should say what I'm doing now. This is just a wooden stick, a piece of doweling. And I will often use this to just finish off the necks. So just edging that up. And oftentimes, this one seems to be okay, but if you have a wonky top, you can use that inside, and you can use that to use a pin to cut it off, which is quite good. So I'm trying to flatten that out. And sometimes, the neck can be far too long for the piece. And again, I can sort that out at turning stage if I decide I look at it. Now, I don't just leave it. There's no point in height for no reason. So a lot of that will be thinned out when I do the turning.
So how is throwing porcelain different to throwing stoneware?
Well, you have a lot less time with it. It doesn't like water as much. So with stoneware, it's much easier to go wider and bigger than it is with porcelain. It's when I throw something bigger with porcelain, it takes me a long time. I'm getting better and better at it the bigger I go, but it's just a bit more tricky, I think everyone say, but it's also very rewarding. I mean, I love stoneware, I really do, but also one of the reasons why using porcelain is good for me is because on some of my pieces I'm not glazing on the outside. So the underglaze porcelain vitrifies when it gets to temperature, so it's absorbed into the body, and it wouldn't happen in quite the same with stoneware. So it's going to a slightly higher temperature. But it's all relative. It's all what you like. I just really love throwing with porcelain. So there you have it, a simple sort of bottle, sort of classic thing that I'll do. And as I said, when I come to turn it, this rounded shape here will carry on inside right to the bottom, and the base will probably be only about that wide. But a lot of that will happen during turning and trimming time.
So are you going to show us some of the turning process as well?
Well, if I've got a piece that I can do that with, I will. Yes, I will. I'll show you a little bit of that. Right, let me just take this off the wheel. The one tool, there we go. That's the tool I'm after.
Because I think it will be very interesting to see how to turn this,
Yes. Let's put that as a space up there. Yeah. You also have to be very careful not to put anything into direct sunlight. So just dry my hands a bit. Let's see where we're at. That piece could find the driest piece. There we go. There's the dry piece that's very dry on top. Is add. So this great thing about this bat system is that I can slot that in there, and then that in there. I keep them on the bats actually until someone. What's wrong with the dog? Until I get ready to take them off. But yeah, I can show you this. Let me just clean this off. It's a messy game, ceramics. Everything's dusty. My poor daughter's really dusty, aren't you, from having been here for just an hour. Right, so I put the piece back in, and with this one, I know that I've thrown the base thin enough. I probably won't do too much with the base, but obviously, and the neck is actually fairly okay on this one. In fact, this neck is actually very, very dry. Things have dried out a little bit too much because I've had them uncovered. So I'm just going to dampen that down. You see there's a slight wonk on it in here, but that won't notice in real. So this is when I wear my glasses when I'm turning. And often I'll work, particularly when I'm turning and often when I'm throwing, with a mirror in front of me. Because when you're sitting sort of over something, you know, you see people doing this a lot and looking to the side, but it's actually really lovely to be able to see the actual shape in front of you. So I do sometimes have a mirror sort of propped here. My wheel's normally facing this way. So I use a surf form. Again, it's a little tip I picked up from a display at Hatfield at Art and Clay one time. And I will use it the right way around. That was the right way around. There we go. And this will take off a very fine layer of clay, which is sometimes what you need. And I absolutely love this bit of the process. I love, you know, all this little stuff that you get out. But it's a really nice way just to really finely trim off the sides. This bit down here I will tackle afterwards. I'll just get that curve. Okay. And when I put this piece on, I felt the weight of it, so I know roughly how much there is to take off. That's famous last words. I could well go straight through this piece, but I mean, that happens, and a lot of, you know, throwing and well, a lot of making things in ceramic is about waste. In that, you know, you do have a lot of things go wrong. For everyone that's gone right, you will have wastage along the way. And I think that's one of the really good things that the pottery throwdown was good for, because it showed people how many things can go wrong. And, you know, I always say I teach at the moment on I help to run this social enterprise in Wood Green in London, where we work with adults in recovery from mental health issues. And I'll always say to students, you know, you can make the most beautiful thing, and it's something someone said to me at Campbell, I think, you know, make this most beautiful thing. It's taken weeks and weeks and weeks, and you get it out of the kiln, and as you're carrying it to where you want it to go, you trip over and it smashes. And so, you know, unfortunately, ceramics break if you drop them, and that's one of the sad things about it. And when you've made something and it's so lovely, and then you smash it, it's a bit annoying, but it happens. So now I'm using a bigger tool, and taking more off the sides as I go, trying to look at this. Yep, sorry, Piyush.
No, I thought your screen froze for a minute. It could be my screen, because I just wanted to check with everyone. I think you're fine now.
Oh, no, yeah, I think we're fine. Good. Yeah, so there's probably a thunderstorm coming. Let's hope not. So what I'm doing now is just smoothing off the sort of ridges I'll have made with the turning tools, because I like a really smooth surface for my decoration. You know, if you're going to put a glaze on top of a piece, just sort of decorate it with a glaze, ridges and things can look so beautiful. So a lot of people love to keep their ridges in, whether they're throwing lines or turning lines.
I think it's frozen again a little bit.
Are we frozen? It doesn't look like it is here at this end. Is the Wi-Fi good, Sadie, still? Does it say on the top? Can you hear me now, Piyush? Can you see us?
Yes, we can see you. I think people did write that the screen froze quite a few times. So that's not a problem. I think it must be
really?
the storm is
Yeah.
coming, the way, you know.
It could be the atmosphere. Yeah, it could be the atmospheric conditions. Unfortunately, we've got good Wi-Fi here, so I'm sorry about that. Right, so I've finished turning the side of that. Now what I'm going to do is just go for the absolute base on it. So I use a tool like this or a pin, depending on what I've got. A lot of turning is to do with the condition of the clay, making sure it's the right sort of hardness. You know, if it's too soft, it's no good, and if it's too dry, you're going to cause dust particles, not safe, which is quite good, because that's one of the things with throwing, is that whenever you start, you leave a lot on the base. I'm just tidying that up. And going under slightly. That's turning. So yeah, I'm just going to wash my hands now. What time are we on, Piyush? How we have?
So we've done half an hour. So I think if you like to show the transfer process, which is, I think, quite fascinating.
Okay, plenty of time.
And
yeah, we'll
yes,
come on to the decorating. Just going to clean off my hands.
Sure. And can we also move the camera to see some of the tools, because people would like to see?
Here, Stacey, that's been better. Is that any better?
Yes.
I wonder if we should go off Wi-Fi. Yeah?
I think internet is playing up a little bit.
Okay. I'm not sure quite what I can do about it. Do you want to put that down here, Sage, or do you want to? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to sit down. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, so I'm going to talk about my decoration. Yeah, lots of people ask me about my decoration, and it's something that I'm really happy to talk about, and I do often face-to-face with people. And I've talked to you about the fact that I did a lot of research into underglaze transfers when I was at Camberwell, and that certainly paid me some dues with the work I'm doing now. In the meantime, all the sort of decoration I've done over the years, and a lot of what I did when I was at Camberwell was using on-glaze transfers. So do you want to pass me a couple of mugs that I've done? There's one of each of you. That's great. So I do a range of just basic mugs where I use transfers, which are, this one is a flower that I painted, and it's a great way, transfers, of adding a design that's sort of repeated. Even the name is transferred on the bottom. So I do a little range of mugs. I only sell these in my studio now. These were little drawings that I did, that when I was listening to my children learn to read when they were young, I used to sort of just doodle away. And so I've used transfers for years and years, sort of on-glaze transfers, and moving into underglaze transfers was quite a new thing. But it's the way that in the British pottery industry and also in China, a lot of the blue and white pottery that you see, it's the way that it's decorated, using a slightly different technique to the one that I'm using, because it's oil-based and it's machine-based, but often a pattern will be printed from a plate onto a rubber dome, and then that will be pressed down onto the piece, and it's a mechanical process. But the great thing about transfer printing is it's something that can be repeated. And whilst I don't make anything that's the same, so if I grab a couple of pieces down here, you'll see that although they've got the same sort of decoration on them, they're not, they're all different. Each one's different. So this is a lovely porcelain flower, by the way, by a lady called Carolyn Lingwood, and they often decorate my work when I'm at shows. I love them. So each one is different. So the decoration is sort of patched together. I think patch is probably a good word to use to describe it. And you'll see that there's snippets of words and things like that. on there, but only snippets, because what I do is I tear up my pieces of decoration before I apply them. So what I do is I just grab these over here. I collect on a virtually daily basis. Actually, could you pass me that sketchbook? Sorry, sweetheart. I collect stories and I collect drawings, and so the work that you see, the decoration on my pieces is almost like a story. It's a story of my life. It's things I've collected along the way. It's words. It's drawings. It's something someone said. It's song lyrics. It's all sorts of things that I've collected throughout my life, and I spend time and a lot of time sort of trawling through old. This is a sort of a diary book that I had when I was a teenager, and in here are full of it's song lyrics I loved, it's stories I wrote, it's poems I wrote, it's drawings that I did that were done for me by people. So it's really sort of moments in time of my life that are important. I carry around with me on a daily basis. I think I stuck one into here. A little book, a little book like this, and I'll do drawings. I collect drawings on a daily basis and into a little book like this. So, and I'll say what it is, or I won't say what it is. It might be, some flowers I saw. It might be a tool I used. It might be just, I don't know, the lines of a building, something someone said, all sorts of things. But I collect them together. And when I have, a collection, I'll then put together a pattern sheet. It's quite interesting. I think there's some in here that I've been probably like everybody else here. Might be in here, doing a lot of Zoom meetings recently. So I think you're going to see this on my work soon. Lots of Zoom squares and things like that are going to be appearing, because that's my life, what has been my life recently. I'm doing a lot of work with the Craft Council at the moment on their Hot House program. These sort of books to collect together imagery. And when I have a sheet, and it's probably better if I show you a sheet here of drawings. So when I have a whole load, I will make a sheet of drawings. And this is actually one of my transfers, but I'll just doodle and I'll put them all together onto a sheet. And then I will convert that sheet onto a screen. So there we go. There's a screen. That's one of the screens I used to print my transfers. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with screen printing, but the areas that haven't been blocked by the pigment will print. So this one will print out. I've got one of those somewhere. Here we go. So this is this one printed. So I put some black on there and it's come through and printed onto newsprint here. So what I do, move that out of the way. I have several screens, and when I'm printing, I tend to print at home rather than at the studio, just because I've got more space for it all to dry and be out of the way. So I'll get my piece. This is a little lidded pot that I've made, and I'll decide, right, well, I'm going to decorate this. And this one I've chosen to do in this design, which is just literally a whole load of flowers. And then on top of that, I will put a glaze, and it will give this sort of effect. So that's the sort of coloration that I'll get at the end of it. So it's the underglaze and the glaze combined that will give that sort of greeny color, slight off greeny color. And then other areas of it where I don't want the transfer will stay the green color of the glaze. So that's a choice I make with each one. And what I do, get myself clear. I do sometimes, I decorate here, but I also decorate at home. I find it quite nice to just sit there, and I sort of decorate anywhere. But I'll start by tearing the pattern into pieces. This one is flowers, so it's going to join together. But often when I'm using one like this, I'll tear through the words. So whilst I'll know what they are, the person viewing it might not know. And I quite like keeping that mystique about what's there. Now these have been printed onto underglaze, as I say, newsprint. And what I have to do then is I'll probably tear a few pieces. Quite a satisfying process with tearing a few pieces. And the first few don't really matter what shape they are. It's when you get later in the day and you think, right, I need something that's going to be this sort of shape. And when I'm building up the pieces that are blue and red, I will really start to plan out. So, for example, I'll often start with the neck, and the neck's really important. And I'll work out where my red bits are going to go and what they're going to be, and then build up around that and look at each piece and see how it's going to fit. But I do sort of concentrate when I'm doing that. This is a bit harder to concentrate today. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place that into the water. So I've wet it and then place it onto the piece. Now this piece has been sanded. I'm looking for my brush. Here we go. Has been sanded down, so it's really lovely and smooth. And I like that smooth finish. But I'll just get a brush and I'm going to just dab that on like that. So it's nice and damp. Try not to get everything else wet. And then I can, just a couple of minutes, peel it off. And you can see that the design has come away from the paper and is now onto the piece. So as you can see, it's quite laborious. Somebody once asked me at a show, was I a manic person? Because they thought I applied each piece, you know, by hand, and I was drawing and I was sort of going a little bit crazy with my drawing each time. You know, it would take so long to do that, but no, I'm not. And there you go. So you can see how I'm building up the pattern as I go, and I've worked out where I want it to go. So obviously there's going to be, it's a little bit like painting a wall. You're sort of like cutting in, but I'll do that afterwards and then adding the main body of the piece. So are there any questions about the decoration? Because I know that a lot of people have asked me this. Will I be showing this?
Should I fire away?
Yeah, fire away, fire away.
Okay, so what mesh is your screen?
What mesh? It's a 46T mesh, and that allows the underglaze to pass through it.
And what is the pigment you're screen printing with?
Well, I'm using underglaze and a little bit of medium and some water. And it's one of those things you really need to play around with, because the conditions of the day will dictate, you know, how quickly things start to dry. The trouble with underglaze is it can clog a screen, so you don't have that much time to work. But it's great fun. There's a lovely lady called Kat Santos who does underglaze printing, and she will print, if you were to print onto leather hard clay, for example, you get a wonderful quality with that. It's different to the quality I'm going to get on this. This is biscuit fired. I will sometimes decorate a piece so this piece is dry, and that's probably a perfect texture to have some, you know, some decoration applied to. But it really depends on you know, what I've got in the studio and when and what I'm planning on doing. A lot of these pieces are going to an exhibition shortly, so they're a specific decoration that are needed for that. But yeah, so it's a mixture of underglaze, some medium, and some water.
And what paper is that?
Well, it's underglazes. So
okay.
I use underglazes. I also use stains. So underglazes and stains, a combination of the two. They'll give you the best effect, and you can mix colors as well, which is nice. And you know, you can buy and I would encourage people, if they want to have a go at this, to buy some stock transfers first. There's various places that sell them. They mainly come from China or Australia, but you can have a go then, and you can have a play. And there's lots of online tutorials of how to do this. So yeah, I think you just got to make it your own. And you can decorate things. You know, if you were to put one big piece around the piece that you have, it would be done very quickly and very satisfying. So you can see my technique, and maybe I'm just a lover of laborious stuff, I don't know, but it takes a while and builds up. But I really like the patience, and I will, you know, look at something and, you know, really take my time with how the decoration is going to go. You know, that's what I'll do. It's part of the whole slow process that is making ceramics. Nothing is quick. It takes time. And I love that.
I think there are a lot of people who have asked the same question about the medium, the ink. So I think, is there a place where they can go and learn a little bit more about it?
You can buy underglazes are available at most pottery shops. You know, most of them are online now, and you can Scarva's a good place to go, and they have a very interesting and useful website showing you what you might need. So there's underglaze, there's stains, there's mediums, and you just really have to have a go. It's one of those things that it's taken me a couple of years to get to where I am with it, and even now it doesn't always work. I'm testing out some new colors. I always have to test things and then work out the various layers. I don't know whether that's you know, that I have lots of test pieces around. Let's just see. You know, this is testing out. This is what I tend to do, is test out glazes and transfers, and then this is me, you know, trying lots of different underglaze colors, because obviously, you know, firing different underglaze colors with different glazes at different temperatures, it all brings different results, which is the wonderful thing about ceramics. And you have to play and see what you what suits what you're doing, really.
So then, do you have to use a particular glaze on top of this?
Not a particular glaze, but you know, again, that can add to the effect. So let's have a look. If I get this piece down, you can see one of the things I love is layering. So here I've got quite a thick glaze over my transfers, but it's not so thick that you can't see what's underneath. And I just love that different effect that you get. So I can sort of vaguely make out that there's some words under there. Somebody said to me once that these pieces, these sort of green pieces, look like they've been dug up, which I took as quite a compliment, because you know, there's something sort of very traditional and grounded about them, and you know, and they're different from every angle. They're different, so they're a particular favorite. I mean, sometimes I'll put the glaze on less thickly. This is a piece I think that's on the Handmade shop at the moment. So it's a little pot, look lovely with some flowers in it. Totally, it's glazed on the inside, so you know, you can absolutely use it. And a lot of my work isn't as practical with the very small spouts, but these pieces are both sort of decorative and useful. So yeah, it's the red pieces don't have a glaze on them. So here the underglaze has vitrified into the porcelain body, and so it's sealed whole stem inside there. But I love that matte feel. None of my, well, some of my glazes are shiny, but not very many. I actually really like the matte feel of things. And something, do you want to pass me that green one, Sadie? Yeah, that's fine, that's great. This is what they'll look like before. So the green one, before I apply the glaze, this hasn't been fired yet at all. That's what that will look like. And then I'm adding the glaze on top, because I just love that combination. And again, it's a lot of, thank you, it's a lot of trial and error. It's all trial and error and testing. It's and that's why colleges are great, because you've got all the materials there, so you haven't got to you know, buy them to have a go yourself.
So how do you glaze a small neck vase on the inside? Isn't it too difficult?
Well, I'll show you how I do that. I've got a very here we go. I've got a series of little funnels like this. So I've got a really tiny one, and that will sit over the edge, and I can pour glaze in there, and the glaze has to be fairly runny to get in there, and I just very slowly, and I'm lifting it out. Takes some time, and obviously I don't want to get any glaze on the outside as well. And then yeah, and then I'll pour it out sort of like this. But yeah, I think this came in a Christmas cracker. So like a lot of ceramic tools, you know, it's things you find along the way, and I'm often losing that down the sink, but luckily it doesn't go quite down, because I'd be lost without that at the moment. But yeah, that's how I do it. I so pour the glaze in and tip it out like you would with most cylindrical vessels. So you can see that pattern's beginning to build up now.
So is there a good website or a company where you can recommend for the clays and the kilns if people are interested in, getting
Yeah,
into
I mean, I buy a lot of my material. I tend to shop around actually for materials. My clay comes from Valentine's Clays. They actually make the clay that I use. So I buy my clay from Valentine's in Stoke. And then a lot of my tools and things like the screen printing materials, not the actual screens, they come from a screen shop, will come from Scarva. And they're based in Belfast, but they deliver really quickly. And, also the people that make the throwing bat that I was showing you, Hartley and Noble, they're great. They make things to order and also very quickly, and they're great. There's also a great magazine, which I probably should have had here, but I don't, called Claycraft. I mean, you've got your wonderful ceramic review, which tells you what's going on in the contemporary ceramic market. But Claycraft is a very accessible magazine for people who are just starting out. And recently there was an article about me in there. I was asked to write a piece about my work and my practice and how I came to be where I am now. And I chose to sort of feature it or base it on London Potters, which is a charity that I'm actually now on the committee of. I'm trying to think it's not the committee, can't think what the name is, but I'm actually one of the people. I work in on their publicity now. But that's a wonderful organization, and I'd say to any aspiring potters out there, whatever level of potting you're at, to find a local society, a group like London Potters. And through London Potters I've done some amazing courses. I've done lots of raku with a guy called Nam Tram, who was on the Pottery Throwdown a couple of seasons back, and I've done printing on clay with Kat Santos. I've done all sorts of wonderful things, social media, and they've all been incredibly cheap and a wonderful way to meet other potters and connect with the network. Because the thing about pottery is, and my friends and I say this over and over, is that it's a very, very friendly world, and people are there to help you, and will often give you lots of advice. Why has this gone wrong? Why has this happened? And someone will know out there. Someone will know. So it's definitely a good thing to do. And you don't have to be a maker to join these societies. At London Potters, we have a lot of collectors who are a part of it, and that way they can get to know some of the makers a bit more and maybe get first access to some of the work that they produce and exhibitions that are put on. So yeah, that's a really good thing to do. And if you then want to know about what tools, where to get this, where to get that, you can ask those forums. And please feel free to email me or contact me on social media after this if there's any questions you think of afterwards. My website is carolyntceramics.com, and I'm Carolyn T Ceramics across social media. I'm very happy to answer questions if I can.
Carolyn, I think we are running out of time, so I have a couple of questions before.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the questions is about your hothouse program with Crafts Council. You haven't spoken about it, and I forgot to mention that. Yes, you.
Okay. Yeah.
Please tell us a little bit about that quickly.
Of course, yes, I should have mentioned that. So Craft Council have done this wonderful scheme over the past few years called Hothouse, and they choose 25, 26 makers across the country, and for a year they mentor those makers. And I was absolutely thrilled to be chosen for Hothouse 2020. And what should have happened is that we should have gone to various places throughout the country and met up as a group and received training on all sorts of things like business growth, financial planning, building your business. We've just done a presentation course. I hope I haven't used too many. Well, I know I've used a few ums in this, but we've done a presentation course which has really helped build my confidence in doing something like this. And of course, because of coronavirus, everything had to go online. So that's why I've been doing so many Zoom meetings. They've done an amazing job of keeping us going. And we're still a really lovely cohesive group. And I will graduate with Hothouse 2020 at the end of the year. And I'm really proud to be part of it. It's a tremendous accolade, and I've learned so much. And I'm really just, it will propel me business wise, and it's really helping to give me some direction and to think about, you know, because you could just be making, but I really want to think about what I want to do and go in a direction that makes my business sustainable for me, both financially and, you know, to keep me motivated. I don't want to get bored of what I'm doing like I did with my bowls, perhaps. And, you know, I don't think I will, because it's opened up lots of avenues for me.
Any last words of advice for people who want to do ceramics or who want to buy ceramics?
I mean, to buy ceramics, there are lots of wonderful forums out there, particularly obviously everything's online at the moment. I've been amazed at the generosity of the public in buying online. Obviously, it helps to see things. But, you know, I think talk to the makers, look at the various sites, look at someone like Handmade, look at the Potter's own websites. You'll see lots of stuff there. Talk to them, you know, engage with people. We love talking. You know, one of the things we really miss about not doing shows is talking to people. And this is a strange experience because I'm talking to my phone, but I know there's people out there. I hope there are. And in terms of aspiring potters, what I would say is pottery is not something that you can sort of do once a week for an hour or two on a Thursday night and progress that quickly. You can do that, obviously. So if you can, I've always said to people, there's not so many courses out there now in terms of the degree courses, but there are lots of courses out there, and there's lots of potters offering teaching. And if you can take maybe a period of holiday from work and devote it to going on a residential course or going on a course that is a regular course that gives you more than a few hours, then I would do that. And if you're going to do a throwing course, make sure that you have access to a wheel and you're not sharing facilities like that, because that is frustrating. Throwing is one of those things that it's the hours you put in, and you know, yeah, the hours you put in, and it's practice. And you know, I'm still learning, and that's one of the wonderful things about it. I'll keep learning. The longer I do it, I'll keep learning, and so it's joyful in that way.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sure people enjoyed it as well. Next week, we have Lisa Marie Goldsmith, who will be showing us cuttlefish casting and creating beautiful jewelry. So please tune in next Wednesday, 23rd January, 4 p.m. Take care. Bye-bye.